welcome into the Week 5 conversation of the G5 Beat. Josh Jones here with John Duncan and Baker Loy. John, I think this is a historic week, if I'm not mistaken. Could you possibly, I know we haven't talked about it at all, but I was curious if you could kind of give us a little background to why this week may be historic.
For those, I'm sure they know, but for those that don't know, UAB is opening up their brand new stadium downtown Birmingham. A protective stadium will be opening this Saturday night as the Liberty Flames, Hugh Freeze and Malik Willis come to town to take on the UAB Blazers. And that was actually our Twitter poll game of the week. So we'll be previewing that in a little bit. But, yeah, excited to get the hell out of Legion Field and be done with it. So,
and I know I give you a hard time about talking about UAB all the time, but no, it's awesome. This is a moment UAB fans have been waiting for. Looking forward to that brand new stadium. It's a huge step in that program's history. So looking forward to that. Can't wait to talk about the game. Baker, what's up, dude?
Man, I'm just saying, if I don't even know if Under Armour still uses the slogan, but if UAB could get some cash on a "we must protect this house" kind of deal, that would be solid.
Oh, Lord. Well, right now we are still in Under Armour school, but Under Armour's kind of on the downslide right now. So hopefully we can get a deal with Nike or Adidas or something coming up soon. But yeah, guys, definitely excited about that. So good things coming, ahead for the UAB football program. Now, unfortunately, we do have some bad news, G5 related. Georgia Southern has just announced that they are parting ways with Coach Chad Lunsford. Wasn't off to the best start this year for Georgia Southern in that program. They just lost a couple in a row. You've got players shotgunning beers on the way to the stadium before the game starts. Just not look. And look, Chad Lunsford, I don't know him personally. And guys, we talked about this before we started recording. He seems like he's a nice guy. For us, a couple years ago when we started the G5 Beat, he was one of the first coaches to actually give us a follow, to interact with us a little bit. So, I still have respect for the guy, but it was just time. And, what are y'all's impressions on this? What do y'all agree that it was time or?
Yeah, it just wasn't a good look. I think for, pun intended or whatever, the thing that pops the lid was the shotgunning of the beer on top of the bus. That's not a good look. But to your point, all respect to him. I think it's just this thing should just not play out well for him. And then, from the latest news, looks like they are going to pay him his buyout. And continue to pay him through his contract, at least for the year. Plus, I think an additional $800,000 from donations. I think with all the factors, they weren't off to the best start. I think it was just time. And if maybe the shotgunning of the beer kind of just sped up the thing, but I think it probably was going to happen eventually.
So, yeah, I think, I've heard a lot of people say that in a way they could have seen him getting fired after last season. He's kind of been on the hot seat, and that seat was definitely growing warmer with how they started the season this year. But I think, like you said, what happened Saturday was the last straw. That player, I'm not going to name his name or anything just for, trying to be respectful to him there, but he was on top of the bus shotgunning a beer, and kids are going to be kids. They're in college. You do things, but the coach just can't let that happen. And Chad Lunsford, man, he's a player's coach. He always kind of has been. Players love him, and that's great. But you still have to have your guys under control, because it was before the game. The most impressive thing is the fact that guy did that. And then he went out and played an entire game. I looked, and he had a tackle in that game. So that's impressive in itself. But, hey, as a head coach, you got to have a little bit more of a grip. And I just think it was time to part ways. One of the things we talked about a minute ago, too, is, where are they going to go from here? Is Georgia Southern, are they going to go back to the same old offensive style that they've had with the triple option? Or Do you guys think that they're going to try to move on?
That's a good question, and that's what the leadership needs to figure out what they want to do. Because, I mean, you had the guy right before Lunsford, Summers, that, he wanted to get away from the option, and quickly, I mean, he was just downright bad, and that's why they, moved on from him. But, I mean, you can kind of expect that when whoever the next coach is, if it's somebody that does not want to run the triple option or anything around, centered around the option, they're going to go through at least a couple down years where they're trying to rebuild that roster and get it to where they want to be. Now, we all know, they probably missed on Jamie Chadwell when they had the chance to hire him at Georgia Southern, and we see what he's doing at Coastal, great things for that program. But just think where they could be right now if it just wasn't for making not so great decisions. But yeah, I'm very curious to see where they go. And then looking down the road, down in Atlanta, not only what the Georgia State program is doing right now, but at Georgia Tech, I mean, they decided to move on from the option, and they're on year 3 or 4 of trying to get away from the option. And they're just now starting to be, kind of competitive and winning some ball games. So I don't know, that program is such, Georgia Southern is just a pride, very proud, which they should be. They should be proud of their program. They won championships in the FCS level. They've competed at a high level, in the Sun Belt already within the first few years. So they're just, I don't know. Yeah, the leadership is going to have to make some tough decisions about what direction they want this program to go towards.
2 quick things of note too. I mean, they've definitely got some option coaches that are around at the academies and whatnot that they could potentially pull into. But Jared Benko, their current athletic director, he's an SEC guy. He came from Mississippi State, and Mississippi State obviously does not do anything with the option there. So it will be interesting to see if he's comfortable coming from a bigger school like that, putting his name on an option coach, or if he wants to take his own route and really kickstart it. And, one other thing to mention, you talk about Georgia Tech, and yeah, it's taken some time, but hey, they got a win over a nationally ranked UNC this past weekend, who may be a little overrated, but it's still a win over a top 25 team. So it can be done with a couple of years' time.
No doubt. But this will definitely have to be something that we all watch and see. Obviously they're not going to do anything now during the season, but definitely have to wait and see what this program decides to do and what direction they decide to go in. But moving on from that, we did have some great G5 action in week 4. Baker, do you want to go over some headlines that we had from week 4?
Absolutely, brother. So like I did last week, just kind of running down some of the big hits here. The Mustangs, they trampled the Frogs, man. I think, did one of you guys possibly call that one last weekend?
I did. It'll never happen again, but I got lucky on that one. But no, they look great, man.
And numero dos here, I believe, was also a call on John Duncan's part, if I recall. But if not, I know he at least called that this was going to happen. He said, "Meet them Roadrunners. They took care of business. They ran over the Tigers this weekend." That was another one. Big game in the G5 there. My Lord, they got out to quite the deficit there against Memphis and came back.
Was not looking good early on.
No.
But, I mean, Sincere McCormick.
Ugh, he's nasty.
Yeah.
He's nasty.
Yeah.
And I think right before we recorded, started recording, we all gave our player of the week, and all 3 of us had Sincere McCormick as our player of the week. But 42 carries, 184 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he caught a couple passes too. So
yeah,
I mean, very well deserving. And I mean, you hardly ever see a running back these days get 42 carries in a ball game. Like, that's just unheard of. But they just kept feeding him, and he kept producing. So
scored that last touchdown that tied the game before they had that drive for the field goal. I mean, he just carried that team on his back the second half.
Definitely.
Really starting in, kind of halfway through the second quarter. After Memphis got that 21-0 lead, man, I kind of too. I thought this was gonna be kind of a good game, and dadgum, I mean, Memphis shot up 21-0. I was like, oh hell, where's the beer? Like, it was rough.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. But hey, awesome win by those guys. A few more headlines here from this weekend. Man, Bowling Green. Bowling Green. That's all you need to say.
Ooh, hey, I think they listened to our MAC preview over the summer.
Fly the
Man,
flag.
yes,
Fly the flag.
yes, 14-10 over Minnesota. Well deserved, Bowling Green. Well
Yeah, I
deserved.
think PJ Fleck's got his eyes on that USC job. They kind of
Ooh.
overlooked that game.
And by the way, I did see a picture from Bowling Green, and they literally were flying the W, and then underneath they were flying the flag, the MAC crossbone flag there that they fly when they beat a Power 5 opponent. So there you
I
go.
love it. I love it. And
Love it.
speaking of the flag too, did y'all see after the SMU TCU game where the SMU player went and tried to put the SMU flag on the midfield logo of TCU, and they got into a scuffle because I love it.
I love it. Bring it.
Oh man, a few more here. A few more quick headlines. Fresno State, they survived the UNLV upset bid. That ended up being a tight game, but Fresno pulled that out. Boise State dominated Utah State in what was a much anticipated game this past weekend. And one more from just this past Thursday. Yes, my homer self with this, but App State beat Marshall in a thriller last Thursday on ESPN. So a lot of good matchups last weekend.
Definitely. And I was going to say, I think the only one we didn't mention out of the 4 games that we previewed last week was UAB got a pretty good win over a very good, I still think a very good Tulane team, 28-21. So good for the Blazers and coming out on top there and to improve to 3-1. But we'll get into that a little bit later as we preview the UAB Liberty game. But guys, I think we can go ahead and move into our previewing our Week 5 action. And what better place to start than Cincinnati traveling down to Notre Dame to take on the Fighting Irish. This will be a 1:30 p.m. Central Time kickoff, televised nationally on NBC. Right now, Cincinnati is a very slight 2-point road favorite at Notre Dame. A couple weeks ago, Cincinnati beat a Power 5 team. They beat Indiana. Very, very slow start in that game. They ended up winning by double digits, 38-24 over Indiana. But just started out really slow and really didn't get things going until midway through the second quarter-ish. But they're going to need to start out right when that ball kicks off in Notre Dame, because if you start out slow against Notre Dame and Brian Kelly, they're going to put you in a hole real quick. And, Notre Dame, they're coming off of a very, very nice win over the Wisconsin Badgers, 41-13. That game was at Soldier Field in Chicago. But just, I don't know, guys. Notre Dame is looking good. But this is the game that, we talked about all offseason that, we felt confident that Cincinnati was going to beat Indiana, even though Indiana had a good year last season. But we felt kind of confident they were going to be able to at least beat Indiana. But this is the game for Cincinnati that if you can beat number 9 Notre Dame, then, right now you're ranked number 7. If you can beat number 9 Notre Dame, you have a legit shot at creeping into that top 4. You're still going to need a little help along the way, but you could at least move down a couple spots. So very big game in the G5, for the G5 as a whole, but definitely for Cincinnati to try and push to get a playoff bid this year.
So I have a couple of thoughts. One, I love Cincinnati going into Notre Dame being a favorite. That just right there, love it. That's enough said. Second, I think that, that close Indiana game might have been the best thing to happen in Cincinnati, especially going in to a bye week this past week. It kind of let them know what they needed to work on. And yeah, Notre Dame, they're more of a consistent. They're not trailblazers on offense, but they are consistent and they execute well. And so if they get up, it might be hard to come back. But in a shootout, I don't know if I trust Jack Cohn from Notre Dame to come out and just kind of match point for point. This offense is for Notre Dame's only averaging 360 yards a game, only 81 of that on the ground, 286 through the air. So it's not like a flashy kind of thing. And their defense, a little susceptible, especially to the run, giving up 130 yards a game. But I really like Cincinnati coming in this spot. Ritter's playing well, 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions on the year. They're averaging 43 points per game, and they're averaging 160. Jerome Ford's got 300 yards, 6 touchdowns on the year, so he may find some room if they can keep a balanced attack against this Notre Dame defense. But if Cincinnati can come in and get off to a hot start, I don't know, the way Cincinnati's defense has been playing, granted starting the year against Miami, Ohio, and then I really think the yardage is deflated. But if they can come in and jump on Notre Dame early, I don't know if Notre Dame can come back, to be honest. So I think, the key will be the start of this game. It's a 2.5-point spread. I'll just go ahead and say I think Cincinnati gets this one. I really do. I think they win probably by, I'm going to say, around a touchdown. And I just really like Cincinnati in the spot coming off that bye week. Notre Dame may feel a little overinflated after a very good win over Wisconsin last week. I really like Cincy in the spot.
Yeah, I mean, Desmond Ridder, he's going to have to play great ball for 4 quarters. We talked about the struggles in the first half against Indiana, but if he can come in and protect the ball and make smart decisions and just play well, then I definitely like Cincinnati in this ball game. But getting the bye week, like Josh just mentioned, is very crucial for Cincinnati to rest up after the Indiana game. But I mean, you go back to the Indiana game, that switch really didn't flip for Cincinnati until the Indiana, I can't remember the defender's name, but he got called for targeting, and that kind of just flipped the whole game.
He's their middle linebacker.
Yeah, it was their best defensive player, yeah. But that, after that happened, it was pretty much Cincinnati the whole rest of the way through. But, I mean, Cincinnati, they're not going to be able to struggle for first 2 quarters and expect to beat Notre Dame.
No, that's for sure. Yeah, no, that is for sure. But the defense playing well and giving up 15 points average per game. Defense really needs to travel. And to your point, John, they really got to come out and just put I would take the ball to receive and just run with it.
So, yeah, I like both of the defenses in this game. To me, I think that it's going to be which team can kind of pierce the shield of that defense there. And, whoever does it first, that might be the team that has the advantage, in my opinion. I personally worry about Cincinnati in this situation because of the Indiana game. Because when Indiana had that linebacker still out there, and again, he was kind of the stalwart of their defense, it seemed like Cincinnati was struggling to move the ball and struggling to score. And Notre Dame, they obviously have some good defensive players there. So, it just worries me going up against another good, big defense like that Cincinnati can perform. But I think the key to them performing up to scale is going to be, can they pass the ball? Because I think that's where Notre Dame is maybe giving them a little leeway. So if Cincinnati can take advantage of that and they can pass the ball on the Irish, I think they've got a chance to make it, a possible win there. Me personally, though, I'm not as confident as you were there, Josh, on it. I hate to say it because obviously, I'm G5 through and through, but I still think Notre Dame will win just based off of what I saw from them in that Wisconsin game last week. Now, granted, they have had some bad games prior to that, so I'm not saying that, they're not capable of, just getting absolutely torched by Cincinnati. I mean, Cincinnati could literally run them out of the stadium if Notre Dame's not up to their game because they're a dang good ball club. But I liked what I saw out of Notre Dame against Wisconsin last week. So, personally, I think they edge them out. 2 quick things of note, though, I do want to say, because John mentioned this a minute ago with Cincinnati possibly moving up into that top 4, creeping up into the playoff discussion if they win. I wonder what you guys' opinion on this would be with Cincinnati moving into the Big 12 and kind of having that attached to their name at this point. Do you think that helps their cause at all with reputation and getting up there?
Not this year, just because they're not playing a Big 12 schedule.
Yeah.
That's my only holdback.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I just wondered what you thought as far as voters go. And the one last thing I got to say, just because I'm kind of a history buff when it comes to everything, I saw this today. One of the guys tweeted this out, but they've only met Cincinnati and Notre Dame one other time, and it was back in 1900. It's been 121 years since they've played. Notre Dame won 58 to nothing there. Cincinnati had they literally were pulling guys out of nowhere to come play that game. So
one thing I do want to note is that Notre Dame did look good last week against Wisconsin, but Wisconsin had 5 turnovers and 2 pick sixes. So that did inflate the score.
Yeah.
So that's why, they look good, but I'm not taking a whole lot out of that Wisconsin game. Defense obviously played well to get 5 turnovers. So, yeah, to your point, Baker, Ritter's going to really have to be on point. But that I'm just not putting a lot of good vibes toward the Irish just off of that game last week. And just with Cincy coming off of that bye week, that's why I just kind of feel the way I do. But I totally see your point.
I'm hoping we can celebrate a win
this
week. I mean,
oh yeah,
I know that. I'm just personally not overly optimistic because I know too Notre Dame, they've probably had this game on their mind for a long time because they've been hearing about Cincinnati and how they're coming and they're trying to make their push with this game.
Yeah, it took their defensive coordinator. They took Cincinnati's defensive coordinator too. So
that's another big point too. I mean, I didn't even think about that. He knows some of what Cincinnati does firsthand, so he can help them out with that scheming.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Definitely. Well, looking forward to hopefully seeing Cincinnati pull out the W, but I'm actually going to kind of lean with Baker and think that Notre Dame probably gets it done. But we'll all be pulling for Cincinnati for sure. The next game that we want to help preview for Week 5 is the Nevada Wolfpack travel down to Boise, Idaho to take on the Boise State Broncos. This will be a 2:30 p.m. Central Time kickoff on Fox Sports 1. And right now, Vegas has Boise State as a 6.5-point favorite. Now, guys, this was another game. Boise took on the Utah State Aggies this past Saturday, and I was impressed. Hank Bachmeier looked really good, throwing for almost 300 yards, 2 touchdowns. Did have the interception, but looked very good. The defense for Boise State, I was really impressed. Utah State was able to kind of move the ball on them pretty much the whole game. And in fact, they ended up giving up. Utah State had 443 yards of total offense, but the Boise State defense, when it came down getting close between that 30-yard line or red zone, they kind of buckled down and really played, kind of bend but don't break defense against the Aggies. And it worked. I mean, like I said, they won 27-3 over, what we thought was a really good Utah State team. So I think Boise State really has, things looking in the right direction. They're going to take on a very talented Nevada Wolfpack team. We no doubt about it. We've talked about how impressed we are with Carson Strong, probably one of the best quarterbacks in the G5, if not the country. But I don't know. I just really like what I've been seeing, especially this past week from Boise State. It wasn't easy getting up at 10 o'clock local time to play Utah State and to play the way they did, especially after the setback they had against Oklahoma State the week before, losing 21-20. Guys, I think Boise State gets it done again this week and is really just basically just taking back this conference and just letting all these other teams in the Mountain West know that, hey, this is our conference. Now, I still think Fresno might have something to say at the end of the season, but right now Boise is playing great football, and especially Hank Bachmeier just looking really good. But, guys, what are your thoughts on this game?
So I'm kind of right there with you. I think Boise's going to win this game probably by 7 or 10 points. Their 2 losses this year combined 6 points. I mean, they should have. I feel like we say this all the time. They should have won that UCF game and then that Oak State game 21-20. I mean, heartbreaker there. I just really like how they're playing. I think, John, they got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, like you said. They're kind of proving a point or looking to prove a point in their conference. And, Bachmeier, he's not overly like impressive, but he comes out, he plays well. He's got 1,100 yards for the season, 3 picks, 7 touchdowns. And I'm curious to see how this Nevada team looks after that loss to Kansas State, even though they did have a bye week. But maybe they were able to work on some things. Maybe can make the game closer or not. To me, I think it really kind of comes down to will Boise be able to stop the run? Now Nevada's not really known for running the ball, but 77 yards is all they're averaging. But it looks like Boise's giving up 210 yards a game on the ground. So if they can keep Nevada one-dimensional, excuse me, apologies. I think they'll win comfortably.
Yeah, so me, I'm on the opposite side of you guys. I'm actually in the Nevada corner here. So here's what I'm looking at. I agree with you first and foremost that I love what Boise did last weekend. And I'll tell you this, if there are any Boise fans that are paying close attention to our show, you probably hate me at this point in the season because I have been completely off of the Boise train like all year since the preview show. And granted, it's bit me multiple times, and it might bite me again this week. And if it does, I will eat my words gladly just for you guys. But my point is here, a couple things. Boise, whether this is a good thing or a bad thing is still to be determined. They're definitely very battle tested with the teams that they have faced so far. They started out the year with UCF, a 3-1 UTEP team, Oklahoma State, and Utah State. Like, those are all pretty good clubs there. So they've played some good ball. But one of the things I worry about is playing every game so far this early in the season against teams that are that good. Is that going to provide a little wear and tear on them, especially against such a high-octane offense that Nevada has? Now, I will say Boise has a very solid defense, so I think that in its own right is going to be a fun matchup watching their defense against Nevada. But I love Carson Strong's arm. I love watching him throw the rock around, and I think that he's going to be able to do that on Saturday. Now, I don't know if he's going to go out there and give them 40 points by any means, but here's what I see on Nevada's side. I see a team that's going to come out mad because they know that they're good, and they know that they're better than how they played in Manhattan, Kansas 2 weeks ago against Kansas State. They should have, in my opinion, played that game a lot closer, if not won, and then they would have 2 Power 5 wins, but they messed that up. So now they have a chance to come back and show the world, hey, we're for real, because a lot of people were hyping them up in the preseason and hopping on the train. So I think they really take that to heart, and they come out strong off of a bye week that gives them extra time to prep for Boise. So, again, you've got 2 weeks to prep for Boise while Boise had 1 week to prep for you, and they're coming off of a game against, a pretty good team in Utah State. So it gives them some extra time to be fresh, to be thoughtful about what they're doing. So I look for Nevada to come out strong and have a big game, and I'm liking the Wolfpack in this one.
Oh, Baker's just a Boise State hater. That's what he is.
Yeah, he is.
Pretty much.
I expect it to be.
I keep jinxing myself, and jinxing the teams that I'm picking this year. So, Boise fans, you should be glad that I'm not picking you at this point. So,
very good point. Well, all right, guys, we'll move into our next game for Week 5. And this was also our Twitter poll game of the week that our listeners helped decide on Twitter. So thank you guys, as always, for voting on these games each week. If you're not following us on Twitter, give us a follow at twitter.com/theg5beat. But that game is Liberty at UAB this Saturday night at 6 p.m. Central Time. It will be televised on CBS Sports Network. Right now, Vegas has UAB as a very slight 1.5-point favorite. So I'm expecting a good ball game, guys. This is as we said at the top of the show, a very big game for UAB because this is, opening up the brand new stadium downtown, Protective Stadium down at Uptown in Birmingham. This is we've been waiting years and years to have a new stadium and to get out of Legion Field. So, this is it's going to be very emotional for, us fans and, of course, obviously for the team and coaching staff. But, just to see how far this program has come since the shutdown in 2015 and 2016. So it's going to be an emotional this Saturday night. But expecting a hell of a ball game from the Liberty Flames. Liberty is coming off of a tough loss at Syracuse. They lost that game 24-21 last Friday night. Really just, kind of messed around with Syracuse. Syracuse, they're a Power 5 school. They might end up being a decent Power 5 school in the ACC. But, that was a game, that Liberty was down, very quickly, 14-0, I believe, at one point. But they were able to turn it around and tied up at 21 and had a chance to win it late and just, turned it over on downs within the 5 yard, within a Syracuse 5 yard line, on fourth down. They were unable to convert. They were able to get the ball back after Syracuse punted, but Malik Willis had a late fumble, which allowed Syracuse to kick the game-winning field goal as time expired. So they're going to come into Birmingham pretty pissed off and look to, get rid of that loss and get back on a winning streak. But I don't know, guys. This might just be the homer in me, but this game is just so big for UAB in this program. I don't know, man. I like UAB's defense in this game to be able to not shut down Malik Willis, but kind of contain him. Malik Willis, hey, he's going to be a first-round draft pick in the NFL. But so he's going to hit some plays, but I do like UAB's defense to at least contain him somewhat. And I think we found our quarterback, guys. Dylan Hopkins had another great game against Tulane this past week. So I say we keep rolling with Hopkins, and I think UAB will get the victory here. And like I said, that might just be the homer in me, but I just think this is too big of a game for this program. And I just like UAB's defense going up against Malik Willis. I think UAB has a better defense than Syracuse. Syracuse was able to get after Malik Willis pretty much the whole game, sacking him multiple times throughout the game, in the backfield the whole game pretty much. So now Hugh Freeze, the head coach of Liberty, we all remember his days at Ole Miss. He's an offensive genius, so I'm sure he'll have something schemed up to go against UAB's defense. But I just like UAB in this spot. Guys, what are your thoughts? I tried not to ramble too much.
No, you're good. And UAB proved me wrong last week. I picked Tulane, and Tulane, they made a comeback and tried to, pull out the win, but they didn't. So, kudos to the UAB team, the Blazers. They went into Tulane, not an easy place to play, and pulled out that win. So, maybe I'm jinxing or maybe you UAB fans be glad I'm not picking you. It is a huge game this week, and I think the emotions can carry this team pretty far. But I don't know, Liberty after a loss, I think they're gonna I really do think they're gonna come in pissed off. John, to your point, I go back and forth because UAB, it's hard to say UAB's going to lose their first game in that stadium, but also Malik Willis, he can run it, he can throw it, and that can cause all kinds of problems for a defense. But UAB has a really good defense. The line's 1.5, so I feel like that says it all. So I keep going back and forth in this game. I completely agree that UAB's found their quarterback, and I think the offense looks way better with Dylan Hopkins in at QB. Let's see if I think last week UAB had a couple of turnovers. If they can keep turnovers low, I think they have a shot at winning the game at home. But my gut tells me to go with Liberty just because that offense and Hugh Freeze and Malik Willis coming off of a loss, especially a close loss like that. But also, I just hate to go against UAB. So I'm literally torn at this game, but my gut's just saying Liberty. So maybe, like I said, for UAB fans, that's good because it seems like every time I pick against you, you prove me wrong, which I hope you do.
So 2 things for you, John, here before I even get into the X's and O's. Just quick questions for you.
Of
For the
course.
listeners, anyone that may even be coming to town for the game, are there any like events around the game that are going on this weekend that people should know about? Just as far as excitement for the stadium going on, or just game day festivities.
Oh yeah, well, first and foremost, so this stadium is going to see about 45,000. They've already sold almost 35,000 tickets already for this game, so it's nearing the point where it might be a sellout. So I expect a fantastic atmosphere for just the game itself. But before the game starts, they're actually going to honor the 2020 team, the Conference USA champions from last year. They're going to do a unveiling for the flag there to just celebrate them. At halftime, they're going to have a bunch of former UAB football alumni be recognized. So that's another good thing. But just also, man, there's going to be so much like activities around for those that aren't familiar with the Uptown area. I mean, you've got so many nice restaurants. This is going to be just a fantastic atmosphere. If you've ever gone to a UAB game at Legion Field, just forget
night and day different.
Night and day, man. This is going to be just so awesome. I really don't want to say a whole lot more because I want you to come out to the game and just experience it. Like, get there. The game's not till 6. We plan on getting there around 1 or 2 o'clock. I actually just found out that we're going to be able to bring the kiddos, to the game. So I'm excited about that. I'm sure they'll have little jumping things in Blazer Village, what they used to back in the Legion Field days. I know they're going to have that again here. It's just going to be so awesome. I think at the stadium itself, they're going to have about 200 beer tap handles with beer flowing. So I mean, it's just going to be a great atmosphere. So, and that's another reason why, like, everything seems to be, just going our way right now for UAB in the program. I just don't see how they drop this game, like, I mean, I guess it can happen because, college football is crazy and, I hope I'm knocking on wood right now. Hopefully I'm not jinxing this, but I really don't see us losing this ball game.
That sounds awesome, man. It sounds like it's going to be a good time. So, no, I definitely would say I would recommend anyone go out that has the chance or tune in on TV just to, get some eyes on the game and see what's going on there. Always
it's right next to a Topgolf. So since it's a night game, go play Topgolf beforehand. It's just a cool area. Sorry, I had to put in my 2 cents.
There you go. So my next question for you, John, too, just like I said before I get on everything. Historically, and I guess recently, how has UAB performed in big games like this that have a lot of build-up, whether it be for the actual game on the field or for the events surrounding it? How do you feel like they've done recently and historically with those situations?
With just like big games, I guess?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you want to talk like just Conference USA championship games, they've won 2 out of the last 3 they played, so they're used to, in that sense, playing like that's an away game, so I guess that wouldn't go to your point. For a home game, I'm trying to think. Recently, maybe the return game, but that was against an FCS opponent. But that was our last huge. We expected a huge crowd. I guess maybe you can go back to the 2018 North Texas game, maybe when North Texas was on fire under Seth Luttrell with Mason Fine, and they came in. They had just beaten Arkansas, and UAB was in a dogfight there and ended up getting the victory. So we played well there. Before the shutdown, UAB's had some big games there, going back to the Ruben Studdard game years and years ago when UAB played Southern Miss, and we did lose that game. But I don't know, man. I guess to answer your question, UAB hasn't had too many big home games per se lately that I could maybe answer your question on. But I don't know. The juices are going to be flowing with these players. It's going to be a little nervous, coming out and maybe having that pressure of, hey, we've got to get this win, to open up this stadium. So,
didn't UAB too have like a home win streak going on for a while too? Like they just play well at home.
Yeah, unfortunately, Louisiana broke that streak last year. But yeah, UAB played well at Legion Field, since the return. Yeah, they won all their home games in 2017, 2018, in 2019, and then lost last year in 2020 to Billy Napier and the Raging Cajuns. So since the return, UAB's only lost one home game. So
yeah,
that's
so
pretty good.
They play well at home.
There you go. Cool. No, I just personally wanted to know. I mean, I think that can be a factor if teams historically have momentum in games like that, or if they're historically maybe gets in their head for struggling with that kind of a game. But I mean, it sounds like either way they should be fine from what you're saying. So as far as getting into the game itself, Liberty, like you said, I think one. And it's kind of like I mentioned a while ago there with Nevada. I think Liberty's going to be frustrated after this Syracuse game. They're going to come out knowing, hey, we can't take another L. We can't lose back-to-back games. Like, this is, our chance at a top 25 ranking. Like, if we lose another game, that's probably out the window with where we are. So it's definitely a big deal for them and Malik Willis especially because – again, I mean, if he starts losing multiple games, that's potentially less coverage, on him. So that's less TV exposure, which is less time that he's in front of, some of the decision makers in terms of the draft and that kind of thing. So, I think it's definitely a big deal for them. But at the same time, like you say, I mean, obviously we can't say it enough. It's a big deal for UAB with what you've got going on. So I think the stakes are high for both teams, really, which makes it fun because you really feel like both teams are going to go all out to prepare this week and going to make it a really fun game, to be honest. So, for me personally looking at it, though, I am kind of with Josh in the fact that I really like Malik Willis if he can perform, because this is the one issue I have with Liberty. I feel like it's a little bit of a one-man show there offensively because of how good Malik Willis is. You wonder if UAB can start to bottle him up. Like, are they going to be able to run the ball? What are they going to do there? Now, defensively, Liberty's got a good defense. So, I mean, expect UAB to maybe struggle at times. I mean, I don't think they'll just be throwing points up on the board left and right there. But like you said, your quarterback, he played well. Hopkins looked good this past weekend. I do wonder if Johnston, maybe if his health status is going to improve this week, if that'll mean anything, but probably not with how good Hopkins played. But I will ask you just one final question. I mean, what do you think the plan is for UAB against Liberty? Like, I know UAB just as much as anyone. You probably looked at Liberty a good bit too, just knowing that was coming up. What do you think specifically UAB is going to have to do?
Yeah, so great question. So if UAB so what they did against North Texas and against Tulane on the defensive side of the ball is they really just rushed three guys up front and were able both weeks to get a lot of pressure on the opposing quarterback in both games. So if UAB is able to just rush three again this week and put pressure on Malik Willis and also have maybe, a linebacker or even, Chris Moll, have somebody just spy on Malik Willis to play that little quarterback spy role, I think that's what they're going to do. And I think that, Clark's going to be ready. Bill Clark, for those that don't know, he's a defensive-minded coach. So him and Coach Reeves, they've been thinking about this game a lot. So I definitely think they're going to try that, just rush three and basically tell Liberty, hey, you're going to have to run the ball on us to beat us. And, Liberty has struggled at times to get that run game going. And I just definitely see UAB doing that and just saying, we definitely respect Malik Willis and his arm, but if you're going to beat us, you're going to have to prove that you can run it on us. So by only rushing three, you kind of get everybody else to sit back and just maybe play a little zone, and just hopefully force Willis into making some bad reads, which, he's human, he can make some bad decisions. And in fact, he made some bad decisions in the Syracuse game. In fact, the last one, fumbling that ball to basically cost his team the game. So I just definitely foresee UAB just rushing three, at least at first, and just seeing if Liberty can run the ball on them with just rushing three guys. And if they can't, Liberty might be in for a long night. But like I said, definitely respect Malik Willis. He's definitely the best quarterback that, we'll face this year. And that's no slight towards the Georgia quarterbacks. They look good, but Malik Willis, this guy's on another level. And, like I said earlier, he's going to get drafted in the first round on the NFL draft this next year. Had a lot of had a lot of scouts at that Syracuse game. I'm sure there'll be more scouts in Birmingham, this Saturday to see Malik Willis too. So I don't know, but if I'm UAB, I'm definitely just rushing three and just saying, hey, you've got to run the ball on us to beat us. So
who do you think is going to be the guy in the UAB backfield that can kind of spy Willis too, like maybe linebacker or something like that?
Yeah, I like Chris Moe to do it. Also, could be Deshaun Oliver or even Noah Wilder. But if I'm trusting one person, I'm definitely putting Chris Moe to be that spy because he's done it before. But one thing that UAB is going to have to do, which, knock on wood, they've shown they have been able to do so far this season, well, except for maybe the Georgia game, but that's being able to tackle well because, Malik Willis, that's a big dude, man. So if you get on him, you're going to have to bring him down. And, good thing about UAB is they tackle well, like I just said, but they also, the team tackles well. So normally wherever you see the ball float towards, you normally see 2 or 3 UAB defenders right around that ball carrier. So hopefully UAB will be able to just make tackles. Now, if UAB starts missing tackles and Malik Willis gets going and they get that run game going with one of those 3 running backs, UAB could be in for a long night. So we'll just have to see.
Good deal, buddy. Sounds good.
Yeah. And if you guys want to hear more, check out a UAB podcast called the Blazer Victory Podcast. And we'll go ahead and move on and not talk any more about this game. But we have one more game. It's the nightcap. It's 7 p.m. Central Time on ESPN Plus. Those Louisiana Raging Cajuns travel down to Mobile to take on the South Alabama Jaguars. And guys, I'm just going to go ahead and say it straight up. Well, right now, Vegas has Louisiana is a 12-point favorite. We might be on upset alert because South Alabama, they're coming off of a bye week. They looked okay. Struggled a little bit with Alcorn, but I don't know. We talked going back to our Sunbelt preview before the season started. All of us kind of saw South Alabama as a kind of like a wild card team, that could make some noise. And guys, this is a prime opportunity for South Alabama to make some noise. They look really good in that Southern Miss game to open the season, 31-7. But, like I said, kind of struggled against Alcorn and, against Bowling Green. But they were able to get 3 wins, 3-0. You've got Louisiana, kind of messed around with Georgia Southern last week, but looked really good the week before against Ohio. But I don't know, guys. It might just be me, but I really like this South Alabama team. So I don't know if they will get the upset, but I would not be surprised if South Alabama can pull off an upset this Saturday.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think if anybody can upset, I think South can do it. To your point, it's kind of one of those teams that kind of threw up in the air and let's see where they land. And, I don't know how to interpret this Raging Cajun team so far this year. They played Nichols close, handled Ohio pretty well, Georgia Southern 28-20 there. They lose to Texas, but it is Texas. This defense, giving up almost 200 yards on the ground. I know that, typically South doesn't rush the ball, only averaging 127 yards a game. But, their defense is giving up some yards, and they're giving up 24 points per game, and Louisiana's only averaging 30 points per game. The only good thing is South is only averaging 27 points per game. But I don't know. I think this game actually will be pretty close. I think that 12.5 line is pretty high in my opinion. And I kind of like this being a little bit more of a higher scoring game, but I still give the nod to Billy Napier and his boys just because he's been there, he's got experience, and I just really like him. I like this team. I like Levi Lewis. And I just trust Lewis more than I trust Bentley, and so I'm just going to give the nod to them. But I think it's going to be a pretty close game.
Yeah. So one of the things that I want to point out real quick about Louisiana, I think this is something that I've seen some of their fans say, and I kind of looked into it a little bit. One of their main problems they're having this year is their third down conversion. They're actually getting a fair amount of yards. I mean, really, they're running and passing the ball fairly well, but they're not necessarily converting their third downs at the highest ratio, which is killing them this year. It's killing drives. And one of the more interesting things that I found, guess who the number one defense in the nation is at preventing the other team from converting third downs is? South Alabama.
Nice.
Which is I'm not trying to throw out all these stats, but I thought that was a very interesting stat when I was looking that up. And additionally, South Alabama has the number 3 rush defense in the nation right now, giving up only 55.3 yards per game. So their defense is not bad. However, I think Louisiana is going to be able to pass the ball. And the other thing that I'm going to point out about South Alabama just in general is kind of pull back the reins a little bit, because you really need to pay attention to who they've played so far. Not that everyone's bad necessarily, but, I mean, you played a Southern Miss team who honestly hasn't been that great. You had a close win over Bowling Green, who was terrible last year. Now, granted, Bowling Green did just beat Minnesota this week.
Yeah, looking better.
Who knows? And then you also had kind of a close win over Alcorn State. So I don't know what to think of South Alabama yet, but I think that those numbers might be a little bit inflated because, again, Louisiana has a lot of talent. So I think you're going to maybe see a little bit more of a different stat line when you see what Louisiana does against South Alabama. That's just my personal take on it. But that doesn't mean that South Alabama has a bad defense if Louisiana does, maybe produce a little more than some of these teams that have played South. So expect to keep an eye on that. Now, granted, if South is shutting Louisiana down like they've done against some of these teams, then South might win. But me personally, I think because of that discrepancy in the teams that they've played, and I also think that, looking at Louisiana, they're kind of on the up, and I don't think that they're going to continue having these issues with the third down conversions all year. I expect that to improve sooner rather than later with how good of a coaching staff and how good a talent they have on their team. I expect them to pass the rock around, and I expect them to win the game this week fairly handedly. I mean, I'm not going to say a blowout, but at least by a couple of touchdowns. Now, granted, the Georgia Southern game was close last week, so there is that. But I don't know. I just think Louisiana is going to come on at some point, and I personally could see it this week. So, yeah, I say they win by at least a couple of touchdowns.
Nice. Well, guys, we before we give our Sunday morning headlines, we are going to do just 3 games for Week 6. We're definitely doing 2 games. We're going to be previewing Boise State again at BYU and Wyoming at Air Force. But we do need you guys to help us pick a third game on our Twitter account, twitter.com/the G5Beat. But Sunday morning around 8 a.m., 9 a.m.-ish, expect to see that poll up there. But we will have 4 games for you to choose, and we just need you to choose one to give us that third game to preview for Week 6. But the games that we're going to put on the poll are UTSA at Western Kentucky, Northern Illinois at Toledo, East Carolina at UCF, and FAU at UAB. Yeah, I know there's another UAB game in there again.
Hey, and how long do the listeners have to vote?
24 hours.
24 hours. So get on it on Sunday. All right, mark your calendars right now.
Yes, especially if you're tired of hearing me talk UAB. Get on it. But guys, let's go ahead and do our Sunday morning headlines, and I'll go ahead and start us off. Now, I'm kind of taking this off the beaten path a little bit, but my headline is going to be mining for 2 more. UTEP is going to be 4-1 after this week, after beating ODU, and they just need 2 more wins after this week to go bowling for the first time in 7 years. So I think the Miners get it done this Saturday at home against ODU to improve to 4-1, and they'll just need 2 more wins to get to bowl eligibility.
I'm going to go for an upset. Mine is going to be Fightless Fighting Illini. I think the Charlotte 49ers go into Illinois and take down the Fighting Illini for an upset. Now, I don't know the way Illinois has been looking, necessarily that be considered an upset, but I like Charlotte in that game.
Club lit, baby, getting another P5 win.
Yes.
All right. Well, obviously, we didn't talk this through beforehand because I'm in the same neck of the woods with Josh on this one. Here's my catchy phrase that I had to say. I'm just being punny with it. I said, I'm picking the Illini to get axed by UNC Charlotte because they're all big on the pickaxe over at UNC Charlotte. So that was my there.
Oh, my goodness. Well, again, you can catch us next week when we preview our Week 6 games. But as always, guys, if you're not subscribed to us on a podcast platform, go ahead and hit that subscribe or follow button, whether that be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Podbean, wherever you get your podcast. Just make sure that you follow or subscribe to us so that way you don't miss any future episodes. But we'll be back next week to recap what happens in Week 5 and get you ready for Week 6. But as always, enjoy watching some football, guys.